For months, satellites had tracked an ominous buildup along Ukraine's borders. Armored convoys stretched for miles, artillery units repositioned in secret, and supply trucks rumbled down desolate highways under the cover of night. Diplomats whispered warnings. Intelligence reports flickered across screens in Washington, London, and Kiev, yet, even with eyes everywhere, the world could not predict the immediacy of what was coming. Something was stirring a storm that would strike before anyone had truly prepared. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, the shadows began to move. The town of Hostamel, a quiet settlement northwest of Kiev, seemed insignificant on the map. Its airport, Antonov, housed the legendary An-225, the largest cargo plane ever built, a behemoth resting in solitude among the hangars. Yet this unassuming airstrip had become a key chess piece in the grand game of war. In the days leading up to the invasion, Ukrainian National Guard units trickled in, mostly young conscripts with basic training and rifles handed down from older generations. Their awareness of the impending danger was limited, their preparation incomplete. And yet, within the quiet barracks and empty runways, a tension began to thicken. Could a handful of guardsmen hold back the tide of one of the largest armies in Europe? The answer would come faster than anyone anticipated. Intelligence briefings had warned of the possibility of airborne assault, but no one knew the exact timing or scale. By early February, reconnaissance confirmed battalions of Russian troops positioned just beyond the border, ready to move. Military planners calculated that capturing Antonov Airport would allow Russian forces to drop troops directly into Kiev's backdoor, bypassing heavily fortified positions around the capital. Ukrainian commanders scrambled to bolster defenses, moving reinforcements with only hours to spare. Among the scattered National Guard, there was little time to contemplate strategy. There was only the quiet preparation, the anxious checking of weapons, and the murmured hope that when the first shock came, they would survive. And then the morning would arrive, bringing with it the first flames of war. As dawn approached on the 24th of February 2022, the premonition of disaster was undeniable. Russian reconnaissance drones hovered silently over fields, signaling the beginning of the end for Hostamel's tranquility. Families in nearby villages awoke to distant rumbles, unsure if the explosions would reach them, or if this was just another tremor in a world growing increasingly chaotic. Ukrainian soldiers exchanged nervous glances, gripping rifles with sweat-slicked hands, hearts hammering in unison. In command rooms, officers studied maps with trembling fingers. Somewhere above the clouds, enemy aircraft were moving into position. And then, without warning, the first missiles streaked toward the airport, small in number, but monumental in implication. The missiles struck with a distant roar, rattling windows and shaking the concrete hangars. Damage was minimal, but the sound was enough to send shockwaves through the defenders. Soldiers sprinted to cover, radios crackling with frantic updates. Had this been the beginning of the main assault or a mere prelude? Moments later, the first helicopters appeared on the horizon, cutting through the gray morning sky with mechanical precision. Their shadow grew over the tarmac, and the realization dawned: the airborne assault was underway. Ukrainian guardsmen braced for the impossible. Would they survive the initial wave, or would the airport fall within hours? By mid-morning, the situation escalated beyond anything previously rehearsed. Reports filtered back that several Russian helicopters had been struck by portable anti-aircraft missiles, forcing pilots into emergency maneuvers over hostile territory. The sky was alive with the roar of engines and the staccato bursts of gunfire. Ukrainian soldiers, barely trained and untested in real battle, found themselves the first line of defense in a war that would reshape their country. Every second counted, and every decision could mean life or death. Somewhere in the chaos, the faint hope of holding the airport flickered. But would it be enough to withstand the storm about to hit Hostamel? The answer hung in the smoke-filled air. If you're finding this story gripping, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Every click helps more people discover these immersive historical narratives and follow the true stories behind the headlines. The quiet morning over Hostamel shattered in an instant. By 6 a.m., the first salvo of Russian missiles streaked across the horizon, their trails bright against the pale winter sky. The explosions that followed were deceptively small, echoing across the flat plains surrounding Antonov Airport, but they signaled the start of a calculated, relentless assault. Ukrainian soldiers, many still untested in the chaos of modern war, scrambled for cover amid the hangars, scanning the skies for what would come next. Smoke curled from scorched earth, dust filled the air, and the sound of distant artillery punctuated the tension. And yet, no one could have imagined the full scale of what was approaching. The sky would soon be filled with machines of war, each carrying the weight of strategy and death. By mid-morning, the first wave of Russian airborne troops descended. Ka-52 Alligator attack helicopters and Mi-24 Hind gunships roared overhead, delivering troops and firepower with precision. Ukrainian defenders, armed with portable anti-aircraft systems, fired with tense accuracy. Missiles streaked upward, piercing the clouds, and multiple helicopters erupted in flames before they could land. On the ground, Russian soldiers, forced into unplanned emergency landings, scrambled to regroup under withering fire. The airport had become a maelstrom of mechanical noise, smoke, and fear. Every second was a battle for survival, every decision a test of courage. And yet, the first clash was only a taste of the relentless fight that would define the day. As Russian forces tried to consolidate control of the northern end of the airstrip, Ukrainian units retreated strategically, prioritizing survival over territory. Commanders radioed orders in rapid succession, organizing ad hoc defensive lines and preparing for the inevitable counterattack. Civilians in nearby villages could see plumes of smoke and the telltale flashes of gunfire, realizing that the war had landed directly on their doorstep. From above, satellite images would later show the choreography of chaos-armored vehicles scattered, helicopters grounded, and soldiers caught in the unpredictable pulse of battle. Hostamel, once a quiet town, had transformed into a crucible of conflict, and the day was far from over. By the afternoon, reinforcements from Russia attempted to land additional troops. Ukrainian anti-aircraft fire again wreaked havoc, forcing many helicopters to turn back mid-flight. Russian commanders, faced with unexpected resistance, scrambled to adjust their strategy. Tanks and mechanized infantry from Belarus were en route, but the narrow roads and snowy conditions slowed their advance. Ukrainian snipers and mobile squads harried the invaders, exploiting every weakness in their formation. The battle had become a tense dance of advance and retreat, fire and counterfire, where victory was measured not in territory, but in seconds gained, lives preserved, and helicopters downed. The airport teetered on the edge who would claim it by nightfall. As dusk approached, Ukrainian forces launched a daring counterattack. Mechanized units and rapid response brigades, reinforced by volunteers and allied Georgian fighters, pushed Russian troops back from the southern perimeter of Antonov. For a brief, fleeting moment, the airport seemed almost under Ukrainian control once more, but the respite was short. From the horizon, the rumble of advancing Russian armored columns signaled that reinforcements were imminent. Soldiers on both sides, exhausted and blooded, readied themselves for another wave, knowing that survival depended on who could strike first and hardest. Overnight, Russian mechanized units, having regrouped and received air support, launched a renewed assault. Ukrainian defenders, though valiant, were forced to withdraw from the hangars they had fought so desperately to hold. The airport, now scarred by fire, debris, and shattered concrete, became a testament to the brutal ebb and flow of modern warfare. Both sides claimed victories, yet the reality on the ground was far grimmer than any propaganda or report could capture. Every decision, every movement, carried the weight of life and death, and Hostamel had become the theater for an unfolding human drama of staggering intensity. Even as Russian forces seized portions of Antonov Airport, Ukrainian resolve hardened like steel in the cold morning air. General Valery Zaluzhny, coordinating from Kiev, understood the stakes. If Antonov fell entirely, Russian troops could flood into the capital's northern approaches unopposed. Ukrainian units, Though smaller in number and often poorly equipped, relied on ingenuity, determination, and intimate knowledge of the terrain. Improvised barricades rose along taxiways, hidden sniper positions dotted the perimeter, and every hangar became a potential fortress. The counterattack was not merely tactical, it was existential. Could a determined few push back a seemingly unstoppable tide? The answer would soon be written in fire and courage. By midday, Ukrainian mechanized brigades, supported by artillery and rapid response infantry, launched a coordinated strike. Tanks and armored personnel carriers maneuvered under the cover of smoke, while air support targeted Russian troop concentrations attempting to solidify their foothold. Helicopters buzzed overhead, dodging missile fire, as small squads executed daring raids behind enemy lines. The fighting was chaotic, brutal, and punctuated by moments of extraordinary heroism. Yet, as the dust settled on the first thrust of the counteroffensive, a chilling realization struck: Russian reinforcements were on the move, and the balance of power could shift at any instant. In villages surrounding Hostamel, civilians watched the distant smoke rise like a dark omen. Families huddled in basements, sharing whispered fears and fleeting glances at the war consuming their landscape. Supply lines were disrupted, communications intermittent, and every act of defiance carried a price. Yet, the Ukrainian forces pressed on. Small victories pushing Russian units back by hundreds of meters, reclaiming destroyed vehicles, and recovering captured ground brought hope. But hope was fragile, suspended on the knife's edge between triumph and disaster. Who would seize the advantage when night fell? By late afternoon, the Ukrainian counterattack had achieved surprising results. Russian forces, surprised by the resilience and tactical creativity of their adversaries, were forced to withdraw from key positions at the southern end of Antonov. Ukrainian troops reclaimed hangars and makeshift barricades, temporarily regaining control of sections of the airport. Morale soared amid exhaustion and bloodshed. Yet, while soldiers celebrated brief victories, reconnaissance reports revealed the ominous approach of Russian mechanized columns, their engines thundering across frozen fields. Hostamel would soon face another trial by fire. Night brought no relief. Russian troops, having regrouped and coordinated with air support, launched a renewed assault. Explosions lit the sky as artillery shells impacted near defensive positions, illuminating the chaos below. Ukrainian units scrambled to reinforce barricades and evacuate casualties, their courage tested by every passing minute. Each counterstrike was met with a heavier response, each victory a temporary reprieve. Soldiers, drenched in mud and sweat, held positions they knew could be overrun at any moment. Would the airport remain in Ukrainian hands, or would the tide finally break against them? As dawn approached the following day, Antonov Airport and the surrounding fields bore the scars of relentless combat. Craters pocked the runways, helicopters were twisted wrecks, and smoke hung in the cold air like a shroud. Ukrainian forces, though battered, had demonstrated extraordinary resilience, delaying Russian plans and inflicting losses far beyond their size. Yet, the strategic implications were sobering. Control of the airport could shift again, and the war for Kiev's northern approaches was far from over. The ebb and flow of this brutal struggle underscored the unforgiving nature of modern warfare, where bravery, preparation, and chance all intersected in deadly uncertainty. If this story grips you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps more viewers discover these immersive historical narratives, allowing the true stories of courage, strategy, and survival to reach a wider audience. The battle for Hostamel and Antonov Airport revealed the stark reality of modern warfare. No plan survives contact with determined defenders. Russian forces, despite their overwhelming numbers and superior equipment, found themselves entangled in a fight that exposed vulnerabilities in strategy, coordination, and morale. Ukrainian soldiers, many of them inexperienced conscripts, had used terrain, timing, and sheer audacity to blunt the initial assault, proving that courage and preparation could, at least temporarily, check a far larger force. Yet the cost of resistance was visible in every shattered hangar, cratered runway, and smoldering vehicle left behind a tangible record of sacrifice written in steel and fire. The aftermath of the initial battles underscored the unpredictability of warfare. Antonov Airport, once a symbol of Ukrainian logistical strength, now lay partially destroyed, its infrastructure compromised and its strategic value diminished. For Russian commanders, what had seemed like a quick airborne operation turned into a costly, grinding fight. Casualties mounted on both sides, while the civilian population endured fear, displacement, and the constant threat of bombardment. Hostamel, though small in size, had become emblematic of resistance, a frontline where the balance between ambition and practicality was starkly exposed. Would the townhold, or would the relentless pressure of Russian advances finally overwhelm its defenders? Even as the airport changed hands multiple times, Ukrainian forces demonstrated remarkable resilience. Intelligence coordination, rapid reinforcement, and the improvisation of defensive measures had slowed the Russian advance toward Kiev, buying critical time for broader defensive preparations. Commanders analyzed each engagement with care, adjusting tactics in real time. Air defenses were redeployed, artillery positions shifted, and urban areas were fortified, transforming the capital's periphery into a maze that an invading force would have to navigate at tremendous cost. Yet, despite these efforts, the human toll weighed heavily. Families torn from homes, soldiers fatigued beyond measure, and the psychological strain of facing an adversary with superior firepower created a tension that would linger for months. The strategic implications extended far beyond Hostamel. The inability to secure Antonov Airport swiftly forced Russia to reconsider logistics and troop movements, slowing the northern advance and complicating broader operational plans. Ukrainian forces exploited every delay, using guerrilla tactics, reconnaissance, and targeted strikes to maintain pressure and retain initiative where possible. The ebb and flow of control over the airport mirrored the uncertainty of the conflict itself. Victories were temporary, and setbacks often exacted a brutal toll. Every battle, every maneuver, became a lesson in the harsh calculus of modern combat. For the Ukrainian defenders, the cost of holding Hostamel was both material and personal. Burned-out vehicles littered the runway. The Antonov AN-225, a symbol of national pride and logistical capacity, was heavily damaged, and hangars were reduced to twisted metal. Yet amid the destruction, the story of human endurance shone through. Soldiers coordinating defenses under fire, medics braving shelling to rescue the wounded, and civilians risking their lives to aid evacuation efforts. These acts of resilience, often overlooked in maps or military reports, shaped the narrative of the conflict, underscoring that strategy and courage were inseparable in moments of crisis. Would the defenders' sacrifices be enough to secure the capital in the weeks ahead, or would the larger machinery of war grind through their efforts? As weeks turned into months, Hostamel became a symbol of Ukrainian resistance, a reminder that even small towns could alter the trajectory of a larger campaign. The lessons of the airport intelligence gathering, rapid mobilization, and unwavering resolve would inform subsequent battles across the country. Russian commanders recalibrated plans, reassessed objectives, and faced the sobering reality that initial assumptions about speed and control had been flawed. Ukrainian forces, in contrast, grew in confidence and capability, their early victories providing momentum that would echo in subsequent engagements. The early struggle for Antonov Airport and Hostamel was more than a tactical contest. It was a test of human endurance, strategic foresight, and national determination. While war continued to spread across Ukraine, these first battles set the tone for the months to follow, demonstrating that even in the face of overwhelming odds, preparation, courage, and ingenuity could shape the course of events. The conflict was far from resolved, but Hostamel's stand had already become a story of resilience, sacrifice, and the profound unpredictability of war.